I thought, all right, like, I've got this, I'm ready to go. And they started giving me, I started getting, I guess at that point, I got my first interview, at which point I realized like I did not know how to talk about programming or interview about programming or anything. And I didn't get that position, obviously, but I think the more time went on, kind of being in that space where you're kind of interviewing, you're kind of feeling confident, but you're not really confident. You know stuff, and you're confident in what you already know, but you see other people knowing a lot more, and you're like, I don't know that much, and I can't talk that much about programming confidently. The more I kind of just like kept showing up to things, and especially in St. Louis, there are so many meetups and there are so many ways to get involved. I think one of the big things for me was just continually at night, like talking programming with people, going to meetups, being kind of involved in this big community that's going on right now. And so more interviews happened, and I kept not getting jobs. This happened for at least like 3 or 4 more times. And it was kind of disheartening. I think it was more, I probably, from once I started like engaging LaunchCode to when I finally got a position, it was decently over a year, at least over a year and 3 months. And for me, that was really disheartening because I was working a part-time job, a job at a nonprofit, going to school at night. And, but I think the thing is that every single time I took a step forward or put myself out there in a way, I made a commitment that even if these people were not going to hire me, I was going to learn something from this process. And I think the big thing is learning to talk programming. It's like the one thing you have to know. And that's why I think classes like this are so great, and being in the community like this is so great, is that you're going to have questions. Doesn't matter if you've been programming for 5 years or 10 years. I think something I thought was really funny recently was that there was somebody wrote a book called Teach Yourself Programming in 10 Years. You know, it's like it's not going to happen. You can't just buy the For Dummies book and then like be there. But eventually, probably like all at the same time, I think it was like this, like I had just got to this point where I just kept doing it. I got 2 job offers at the exact same time, and I accepted the one at Washington University as kind of a developer / data scientist. And I mean, it was crazy, awesome whirlwind experience where it was like, I just kind of got that affirmation that I'd put so much work into it. People were like, yeah, you kind of know what you're doing at this point. You don't need the training wheels anymore. You just, like for me, it was just like sticking to it. Because I know there were points like in my track where I was just like, I don't know if I'm even cut out for this. Like, I'm doing a lot of stuff, I'm putting a lot of work in, but I'm not necessarily confident in everything, or nothing's really happening this week or next week as far as like, you know, my opportunities and stuff. So sometimes I think it can be pretty disheartening, but I think for the most part, like, if you keep programming and you keep like committing yourself to coming in here, especially like on a week-to-week basis, and especially like just daily thinking like one thing, or having like one part of your life you dedicate to like learning something more about programming, where it's like, whether it's going to a forum or like asking a question on Stack Overflow or this or that, like you're gonna keep learning and you're gonna keep progressing, and it's just gonna get to a point where people can't deny that you like know stuff about programming. And so, I mean, even like, I'm at a point now, this week I sat in on an interview with the BBC about, we work in the biotech sector, which is really big. St. Louis is just like a great place to be for startups. So we interviewed with the BBC. I'm on an email chain right now with the National Institute of Health, getting data from them, parsing it, turning it into CSVs that I can inject into a database and play with. I mean, and I think like a year ago before I got that position, I wouldn't have imagined it. I would have been like, I hope someone picks me up. My goal was like, I hope somebody picks me up before the next presidential election. I'll wait another year or something, and it's like, it's not even there yet. I'm still programming. So I think if you have it in your mind that I'm going to do this one class, I'm going to follow all the steps, and at the end of the class, I'm going to walk out and have a job and an apprenticeship, and it's just going to be done. Like, try to think less about that and think more about, I'm going to keep programming, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep challenging myself, and there's going to be a point at which I'm just going to know enough that people are going to need my skills. And so that's really what I would say. Like, that's kind of the attitude you have to have about it. Because LaunchCode has done some amazing stuff. Like, hundreds of people have got positions through LaunchCode. The person who originally got me interested in this position is now working for Hulu out in LA. And he was in the same position I was. So I'd really say, like, stick to the classes. Definitely come here like every single time that you can. But think of it more as like, LaunchCode is a process, it's not a class. It is a way to keep you engaged in a huge community in St. Louis, and especially a startup community that has just a lot of crazy stuff going on right now. So that's my talk.
He works at LaunchCode and is going to tell you a bit about himself and what he does and our process in general.
Yeah.
And then if you have questions for either of them.
Yeah, great. Well, it's going to be really hard to follow that act. I mean, he pretty much said it all. But I'll tell you a little bit about my background and what I do at LaunchCode. I'm a company relations manager here at LaunchCode, which essentially means that I work with the companies that we place all of you with, which is a pretty awesome job, and at the same time it's really daunting because we know that what we're out here doing every day is advocating for you and ensuring that you get a job at the end of this rainbow. And what Ryan really said so well is that this is a process. What we're doing here is a process. What we're doing together is a long process, and it requires this like degree of resiliency, right? That is almost superhuman. So when I look out at all of you, I mean, I see I'm just in awe of what you've done so far, and also what you have yet to do, right? So if we're looking at one funnel, right, which is like to make it through this course, right? You have like made it through the curriculum, right? And now you're entering this wholly new funnel where the project lies, right? And then you will complete this, great project that's hopefully a complex project with multiple features that kind of shows off what you can do now, right? And you still have yet, to learn a lot, right? And then at the end of that, you're going to apply to LaunchCode. You're going to take the HackerRank test. You're going to do an hour-long whiteboard interview with one of our evaluation associates. And then at the end of that, you will be given a ton of feedback and that feedback might be, hey, you're ready to rock. You're going to be talking to Adam and Carrie and the rest of the company team, and we're going to place you into a job. Or that feedback might be, you're amazing with the soft skills right now, but here's one area where we really think we could improve. We want you to show up to this mentoring session on Friday nights. You're going to get this project together, and then we're going to get back into the process. So I think that the one thing that I would take away from this is that we have your back, and that kind of never stops. So, and we will be very honest about like where you are in the process and when you're ready. And the best piece of advice that I think I could give you is that when we say you're ready, you are good to go. I think one of the things we run into sometimes is this imposter syndrome, right? Where kind of like you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, am I really going to go in there and interview, at Express Scripts tomorrow? And you're like, yes, I am. I am going to do that tomorrow. And that's a scary thing, And I think Ryan, said really well, that it was tough for him to kind of go into those interviews and hear no. You know, because that's obviously a very tough thing to hear. But I think if you internalize that as feedback and really make that kind of another step on your journey, it can really pay off big. We just had a young man in our playground from Chicago who, and playground, sorry, is an internal term for what we use for all of our candidates are kind of like housed in this place that we draw from, right? And this guy drove down to Springfield, Illinois, to one of our kind of like companies that has hired a few launch coders, aced the interview, and was driving back home when I called him and told him that he got an offer, and he just like couldn't believe it, because he had been working part-time for his brother-in-law who had like given him a job, and he was just wondering if it was ever going to happen. And I would say, like Ryan, I would echo that sentiment of just be faithful to the process. Just always know that what we're doing, what we're trying to do with you, alongside you, is just kind of guide you to that same end goal, because that's really, it's your metric for success, but ultimately it's our metric for success too. It's how many placements, how many people that we can get into jobs and change lives. So does that sound good? What questions do you have for me? I bet I'll take just maybe 3 or 4 questions if you have a couple.
Whiteboard interview.
Whiteboard interview.
Elaborate a little.
Oh my gosh. So whiteboard interview is it's basically where it's terrifying. I'm kidding. It was terrifying. So they basically like roll in a whiteboard just like that one right there, and they'll put it like right next to you, and they'll get the whole like team around. And they might everyone will kind of sit around a table like this, and they'll say like, all right, man, I'm gonna throw this array up there, and they're like, I want you to arrange that array in this way. I want you to exclude like maybe that number. And you're like, okay. And you might be thinking right now in your head, right? You're like, I can do that. Right? So you'll do that, and you'll do that in the way that you know how to do it, right? And then they're going to take away one way to do it, that way to do it. They're going to be like, all right, well, if you didn't do it that way, how would you do it? And you're like, you might think for a second, like maybe brainstorm some stuff out, and then you're like, I would do that, I think I'd do it this way. And then they're like, well, what would you do now if I said you can't do it that way? And essentially what they're trying to get you to, which is I think what a lot of teams want in developers now, is a developer that can collaborate. Because at some point, you're not going to know how to, they're going to keep taking away tools, right? And then they're going to want to see how you learn, and how you communicate, and how you rely on your team. And those, I think, unfortunately, for like the education system, that's often perceived as, in the world of education, as like a weakness, right? Like asking for help, or collaborating, or whatever. But really, in the professional world, that is your biggest strength. If you can just say like, I'm thinking I want to go about it this way, but I feel like I'm going to run into a hiccup when I get to this. What would you advise to do? I mean, what have you guys done in the past? I mean, kind of answering a question like that, I think you could do that. So I think for the whiteboard interview, there are 2 things being assessed, right? It's technical skills, but also, are you able to collaborate, communicate, and kind of, can they envision you as a team member? I always say, like, you want to get on the same side of the table with the interviewer and look at the problem, as opposed to sitting across from the interviewer and thinking of them as your adversary. Does that make sense? And I think that, can really come in handy in a lot of different scenarios. Any other questions? All right, congratulations to you guys. You should be proud. This is a pretty big day, and you've made it through the curriculum. Give yourselves another one.
Any questions for Ryan?